Hi everyone and welcome back. So one of my DIY obsessions over the years was to find a truly transparent clay. I've made videos on various products before, such as this translucent Japanese clay and the multi-purpose museum gel, but none of them lived up to my expectations. Now I think I've finally discovered the perfect material for making crystal clear pieces. However, most of the videos I've seen of people using this product often contain massive safety mistakes. So keep on watching to find out how you can work safely and effectively with UV clay. First, let's do a quick recap of the previously mentioned types of clay. The one on the left is a Japanese brand that's not surprisingly no longer on the market. The images on the box look beautiful, but I've never been able to get this one to work properly. I always thought this was some sort of plastic or wax, but it's actually silicone based. This is all the more surprising because silicone should not dry up very easily, but this clay always feels like a solid lump of unmelted hot glue. It comes with a small pot of liquid, which looks like it could make it softer, but it's actually an accelerator designed to speed up the curing process. The one on the right is museum gel, which I've made several videos about last year. This is a putty designed to prevent objects from falling over in museums, and it's also useful for household organization. I find it extremely aesthetic to play with, and it can also be mixed with ink or glitter. But unfortunately, museum gel doesn't harden, so whatever you make will eventually melt into a flat puddle. Now let's move on to clear UV clay, and I bought this from Temu for about $5. The clue is in the name because this is actually an extremely thick UV resin. I've seen so many clips of people using this on Xiaohongshu, which is like Chinese Instagram, and they're just rolling it between their bare fingers, which makes me cringe. The problem with calling this clay is that it implies this material is safe for skin contact, when this one is definitely not. When you first open it, you get the unmistakable smell of UV resin. If you've made any Miniverse kits, then you know exactly what this smells like. The consistency is surprisingly similar to museum gel, but of course museum gel doesn't have a smell and it's safe for skin. You can pull it apart, knead it, and it's pretty good at holding its shape. The only comparable material I can think of is 3D modeling gel used in nail art. I decided to buy these two from a nail art supply shop just to compare. As you can see, this one is a bit drier and the texture reminds me of plasticine. However, this nail art gel is significantly more expensive for a tiny amount, and it also smells horrible. I'm not joking when I say that this one literally stank like poo. I'm not a fan of the resin smell, but it's much better than whatever chemicals they put inside here. One interesting thing I noticed about UV clay is that it tends to flatten down after a while. It's clearly a thixotropic liquid similar to museum gel or oobleck. It also means that you have to be quite fast at sculpting because the details might start to slide if you don't cure it in time. I'm going to make Bubbles from the amazing Digital Circus, who's one of my favorite characters from the show. He's also perfect for testing out a transparent material. On a side note, I always thought Bubbles was a girl, but I went to look it up for this video and the pronouns are he, him. Bubbles is not totally transparent, but more of a lilac shade, so I'm going to try out this purple glitter flake as well. I'm simply rolling the clay into a ball and then sprinkling the glitter all over it. This creates a beautiful effect that looks exactly like the shimmering colors on a real bubble. Now I'm going to cure it using a small UV lamp, which I also bought from Temu. This doesn't take up a lot of space and is really useful for doing small DIY work or if you like making Miniverse balls. The main problem I had here is trying to keep the ball perfectly spherical. I'm rolling it around all the time just to make sure the base doesn't start to flatten out. However, once the outermost layer starts to cure, it becomes a lot easier to keep the shape. I'm also pleasantly surprised that the glitter flakes are perfectly stuck to the outermost layer. This is a great way to add some dimension to a transparent piece without losing the aesthetics. It's also important to mention that UV clay tends to get cloudy the more you work with it, similar to clear slime. So if you want something perfectly transparent, then you have to handle the clay as little as possible, and ideally use molds to create your shape instead of sculpting it by hand. To make Bubbles' teeth, I'm going to use the white nail art gel. I'm rolling out a flat piece and then cutting out a leaf shape. Then I'm attaching this to the ball and using a scalpel to create the details. This part was a bit trickier than I expected because the nail art gel starts to cure very quickly even though it's not under a lamp. I think it was just the daylight coming through the window that was causing it to harden. So instead of working with a soft clay, it felt more like cutting through semi-solid polymer clay. I'm slicing about 2 millimeters away between each tooth so you can see a clearly defined line. Then I'm curing the rest using the UV light. To make Bubbles' eye, I'm going to use mica dust. You can get sets of mica pigments like this from Amazon or Temu pretty cheaply. These are really useful for adding color to all kinds of DIY projects like slime, squishies, nanobubbles, or clay. Transparent base materials are particularly suitable for pigments because they reveal the color really easily. As you can see, I only needed a tiny bit to create an opaque black shade. I've also seen people adding color to UV clay using pastel dust powder or even makeup. Now I'm just pressing Bubbles' eyes into place and curing them again. Another thing about UV resin is that the curing time depends on how easily light can penetrate through the material. In this case, the eyes took longer to cure because they're solid black, compared to the body, which is larger but fully transparent. And now Bubbles is finished. I was originally thinking of making him as a squishy or nanobubble, but there's something very satisfying about being able to hold a solid piece. UV clay is a great material that gives you more options to create transparent pieces. However, at the moment, it's still fairly rare to find, and I've only seen it used on Chinese social media. You can find it on Temu under clear clay or UV clay. Just remember to wear gloves, and you'll also need a UV lamp to harden the pieces. I hope this was interesting, and be sure to subscribe if you want to know more about new and weird craft supplies. I'm Joanna, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!